Humanitarian aid distribution to the people of St. Vicent and the Grenadines continues following the ongoing La Soufriere volcano eruption. Serbia is said to become the first European country outside Russia and Belarus to begin manufacturing the Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine. NATO allies announced they will start withdrawing their forces from Afghanistan by May the 1st, after the United States announced it will pull out its troops in September. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. In St. Vicent and the Grenadines, authorities continue the distribution of humanitarian aid to shelters and areas affected by the eruption of La Soufriere volcano. In the capital, Kingstown, groups of volunteers and collaborators delivered supplies to families and citizens evacuated from the communities in the volcano's path. Representatives of the international organizations stated that the distribution of essential products is being done in organized phases to avoid COVID-19 contagion. The government of St. Vicent and the Grenadines has expressed its gratitude for the support of neighboring countries such as Cuba and Venezuela. In the meantime, the National Emergency Management Organization continues to monitor the volcano's activity.
I'm in charge of the warehouse here. The warehouse is an emergency warehouse. It was built on Saturday to receive, take inventory, and distribute all the supplies arriving in the country, and those that are already in the country, and that the government and private sectors are purchasing. And everything is controlled by NEMO, the National Agency Management Organization of St. Vicent.
Humanitarian aid distribution to the people of St. Vicent and the Grenadines continues following the ongoing La Soufriere volcano eruption. Neighboring nations have also stepped up to lend a helping hand. Belize has pledged $50,000 to assist the country's government and people, and Grenada will provide $37,000 in support. Both nations will also provide resources to assist personnel on the ground. Brazil's Supreme Federal Court will decide whether a criminal court located in the city of Curitiba had the jurisdiction to try and convict former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva 3 years ago. The top court's plenary will rule on the habeas corpus petition that led to the decision by the Justice Edson Fachin on March the 8th, which annulled all the convictions against the former president and restore his political rights. According to Lula's defense, that ruling demonstrates that the Curitiba court never had the jurisdiction to try the former president and is a major advance in the battle to clear Lula's name, in a case that was politically biased and sought to prevent him from gaining another electoral victory. Lula was imprisoned for 580 days and banned from running for president in 2018. And Brazil's Supreme Federal Court approved the installation of a parliamentary commission of inquiry to analyze allegations of genocide against President Jair Bolsonaro for his handling of the COVID-19 health crisis. With 10 votes in favor and 1 against, the Supreme Court endorsed the decision of Judge Luis Roberto Barroso, who previously authorized the Senate to create the Parliamentary Commission and who referred to the worsening of the pandemic as one of the arguments justifying its implementation. The Parliamentary Commission will analyze the government's management of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to opposition Senator Randolfo Rodriguez, who requested the creation of the commission, the objective is the inquiry is to analyze the acts and failings of the federal government in dealing with the health crisis, as well as to determine the responsibility of the president in the worsening situation. In Bolivia, the Minister of Rural Development and Lands, Edwin Characayo, was arrested on Tuesday night after being caught red-handed receiving a $20,000 bribe in exchange for favors in the processing and provision of land. Characayo was recorded and detained at the moment he was receiving the cash, alongside his accomplice, Hiper Garcia, a director of the ministry on street in La Paz. As the Minister of Government, Eduardo del Castillo, informed, authorities collected telephone recordings and other evidence. The cash was an advance of a higher payment of some $100,000, officials reported. Characayo will be tried on corruption charges. Following the arrest of the Minister of Rural Development and Lands for accepting a bribe, Bolivian President Luis Arce stated on his Twitter account that his government will not cover up any kind of corruption, no matter who is involved, noting that the minister will be brought to justice accordingly. In the Dominican Republic, the Medical Association has mobilized to demand better fees from health insurance companies. Union President Waldo Ariel Suero stated that 53 medical associations are participating in protests, which concluded with a rally at the headquarters of the Association of Health Risk Administrators in the capital. The union rep stressed that the doctors' fees have not changed for 14 years, which is why they have decided to mobilize to demand the government meet their request. Doctors also warned that if their demands are not heard, they will suspend medical services in private clinics and hospitals. On Wednesday, the Cuban Council of State approved 3 new decree laws regulating telecommunications, the state enterprise system, and social security. The legislation will contribute to counteracting radio frequency and cyber attacks, as well as safeguarding the principles of security and invulnerability of telecommunications for the benefit of the economy, society, and national security and defense. Meanwhile, the decree modifying the Social Security Regulations of 2008 seeks to facilitate the reincorporation of retirees into the labor force. The creation of the National Innovation Council was also agreed, a body that will assist the President in promoting innovation in the functioning of the state. In the United States, the police officer who shot dead 20-year-old black man Don Wright in a Minneapolis suburb was arrested this Wednesday on manslaughter charges. Brooklyn Center has seen nightly protests since white police officer Kim Potter opened fire on Wright in his car on Sunday. Racial tensions were already high in the Midwestern U.S. city as it hosts the trial of the white policeman charged with murdering George Floyd, whose death sparked both national and international outrage over continued police brutality and systemic racism. Potter, a 26-year police veteran who resigned after Wright's death, faces a maximum of 10 years in jail if convicted of second-degree manslaughter.
She's the training officer. She's training the young officers, Rachel, of what to do in these situations. Was that a lesson in de-escalation or a lesson in escalation? We can do better, America. That's all we're saying here at the National Action Network Convention.
Manslaughter 2 is the least she should get. The least, possibly more. When you look at the fact that you're dealing with a 26-year veteran, if she didn't know in 26 years the difference in size and weight of a gun as opposed to a taser, then how was she a veteran in policing?
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Serbia is said to become the first European country outside Russia and Belarus to begin manufacturing the Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine. Authorities said that manufacturing will begin on May the 20th at Belgrade's Torlak Institute. Russia registered Sputnik V last August ahead of a large-scale clinical trials in a fast-track process. Despite initial doubts cast on Russia's jab by Western nations, the scientific and medical reviews have been positive, with renowned medical journal The Lancet publishing results showing it to be safe and more than 90% effective. The vaccine has now been registered for the use in dozens of countries. A more contagious Brazilian variant of the coronavirus that emerged in the Amazon late last year is fueling fears the pandemic will flare anew, leading several countries to suspend flights from Brazil.
Variant that is of great concern because it has a very high transmission capacity. The virus load that each infected person carries from the variant is much higher, so one person can infect many more people. So without doubt, the P1 variant is more transmissible. That is indisputable. Although we are not sure if it is more lethal than the original strain, my perspective is that it is more lethal. We are losing more Brazilians because of the variant that is circulating in our population. So of course, if I were head of state of another country, I would do everything to prevent that variant from entering my country and spreading.
The suspension of air travel between France and Brazil this week is another blow to an economy severely impacted by the pandemic, and another sign that until infection rates come under control, there will be little chance for a return to normalcy. France joins a list of nations that have restricted or halted flights to Brazil, but travelers continue to arrive despite a surge in infections that has caused restrictions in major cities like Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and even though passengers must present a negative COVID-19 test before departure and submit a medical questionnaire to the Brazilian government health agency. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez announced an extension of a night curfew and the closure of schools in Buenos Aires metropolitan area in a toughening of measures to curb the spread of COVID-19. The South American country has almost 5 times as many new cases per day compared to a month ago, when the average was 6,000, with the latest figure reaching 25,000.
For 2 weeks starting Monday, teachers, non-teaching staff, and students will not be required to attend classes. The other measures will come into effect at 0 hours on Friday. From 0 hours on Friday until April the 30th, all the activities I have mentioned will be restricted, including circulation on the streets. We have to understand the crucial moment we are living in, and know that I have no political interest in what I am proposing to you today, that I am not here proposing these things to see how I can make political profit, that the only thing that matters to me is preserving health.
Uruguay has reported a 24-hour record coronavirus death toll, having gone from one of the least affected countries to registering the highest number of new daily cases per capita in the world. How government data released late Monday show a record 71 deaths in the previous 24 hours, bringing the total to 1,533 in the country of 3.4 million inhabitants. The figures are still low compared to many other nations in the region, but some 1,300 of the fatalities, or nearly 90%, have been registered since January this year, and a third in April alone. Long held up as an example in the fight against COVID-19, Uruguay has never imposed a curfew or lockdown, despite calls from some health experts, and businesses, bars and restaurants remain open. This Wednesday, Uruguayan authorities reported the near collapse of the healthcare system, with a shortage of hospitals beds and overcrowded intensive care units due to the increase in COVID-19 patients. In the past 24 hours, over 2,000 new cases were reported, as well as 62 new COVID-19 related fatalities. Residents of the Colombian capital, Bogotá, were being tested for COVID-19 at a tent set up by the city authorities this Wednesday, a day after President Iván Duque announced a second consecutive weekend lockdown for the capital.
Fact that they are free tests because people from vulnerable populations can access them more easily. And if you are unwell or you work on the street every day and do not have the possibility of paying for a test and a private health insurance or with a private company, then you can come and get one here. I'm going to get a COVID-19 test to look after myself, my colleagues and my family, because I go out to work every day and you never know, you need to look after yourself.
The Pan American Health Organization announced on Wednesday that Haiti and Venezuela have rejected the AstraZeneca vaccines provided through the COVAX program, and in the case of Haiti, the doses could be given to another country. Venezuela has said it stands by its decision not to authorize the use of AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine in the country.
He informed that it would not receive the AstraZeneca vaccines. There is no possibility to have an option for another vaccine in countries that are supported. That means we are working with this government of Haiti, with the Ministry of Health, to show them the data, to show them the safety of the vaccine, to provide the recommendation of the EMS, of the European Medicine Agency, so the country can receive the vaccines. Because if the country confirms that they will not receive the vaccines, what happens is that those doses that are already reserved for Haiti will be assigned to other participating countries.
Mexican health officials are urging residents to get tested for COVID-19 amid concerns of a new wave of infections following the Easter holiday period. In recent days, some testing centers across the country have recorded an increase in the number of people checking if they are positive for COVID-19.
Particular testing center averages about 250 tests per day, and it is the last few days we have seen an increase of about 50 more tests per day, although we have not identified that many more positives yet. Following a contact of risk or from the moment of contagion, 1 or about 2 weeks have to pass to develop symptoms. So we are still in the time for us to see the impact of Easter on the health of the population.
And we have more stories coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. NATO allies announced they will start withdrawing their forces from Afghanistan by May the 1st, after the United States announced it will pull its troops out in September. U.S. President Joe Biden announced on Tuesday that Washington will withdraw its remaining 2,500 troops from Afghanistan by September 11th, to coincide with the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks that were used to justify the war. The announcement represents a delay of just over 5 months from the May 1st deadline agreed by former U.S. President Donald Trump with the Taliban. The 9,600-strong NATO mission in Afghanistan, which includes the U.S. troops and depends heavily on Washington's military assets, includes personnel from 36 NATO members and partner countries. Russian Navy vessels will conduct artillery exercises in the Black Sea, the government announced on Wednesday. The move comes in response to the deployment of 2 United States warships in the region, as tensions is growing along the Ukrainian-Russian border and the Crimean Peninsula. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov demanded Washington stay away from the Crimea and its Black Sea coast. The official described the presence of the United States ships as a provocation, which puts Moscow to the test. The White House had earlier announced the deployment of 2 warships under the pretext of supporting Ukraine in the face of what it called the increase of Russian military presence on the border. And Russia is open to holding a meeting between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden of the United States in the future, but it's now too early to get into details, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova stated. The potential meeting came up in a recent phone conversation between Putin and Biden. Finland expressed its willingness to host the encounter. China warned the United States to refrain from the official contacts with Taiwan after former U.S. Senator and 2 ex-State Department officials arrived on the island on Wednesday. Taiwan is a breakaway Chinese territory established after the founding of Socialist China in 1949, and which Beijing does not recognize as an independent country. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian urged the U.S. to immediately stop official interactions in any form with Taiwan authorities and prudently handle Taiwan-related issues. The Chinese official also warned the U.S. to avoid harming Chinese relations and peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. The move is the latest in a series increased by the United States and other powers to undermine the One China policy. In northern Myanmar, heavy fighting continues to be reported between the military and the rebels of the Kachin Independence Army. According to local news reports, the fighting intensified in recent days after the Kachin Army, the military wing of the Kachin Independence Organization, which represents ethnic Kachins, seized a military base near the border with China on March 25th. Both sides saw casualties according to unofficial reports. The Myanmar army has launched several airstrikes to try and recapture the base, suffering several losses. A Kachin army colonel said in a telephone interview with local reporters that 40 Kachin fighters as well as civilians were killed. Residents in the Somali capital of Mogadishu have reacted to the news that President Mohamed Abdullah Mohamed, also known as Farmajo, signed a law extending his presidential term by 2 years on Tuesday, despite the Speaker of the Senate slamming the move as unconstitutional.
The 2-year extension of the parliament is wrong because, constitutionally, elections should be held every 4 years. So, the extension is illegal and it can lead the country into a political crisis. The extension can have more negative impacts on the country's politics and the security, because you can see that there are more opponents and regional state leaders who are against the extension.
7 years after the abduction of hundreds of schoolgirls in Chibok, Nigeria, parents and relatives of the victims gathered to pray and mark a day of remembrance. Over 100 girls still remain missing after Boko Haram gunmen seized 276 from a secondary school in the remote town of Chibok, in Borno State, on April 14, 2014. The group claims Islam opposes the education of women, arguing that under its version of Sharia law, women should be raised to be mothers, servants, and wives.
School. One Mariam and the other one Hamsatsu Abubakar, and the purpose of enrolling them into school is nothing more than just for them to gain knowledge. The school belongs to the government, and so to speak, I'm not blaming the terrorists, I rather blame the government.
To let the government and authorities have a convergent efforts to rescue our daughters through the grace of God, that's my own wish and desire.
In the French capital, the restoration of the Notre Dame Cathedral 2 years after the fire that almost entirely destroyed the UNESCO World Heritage Site is facing a series of environmental issues. In order to repair Notre Dame ahead of the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, officials are combing ancient, state-owned and private forests for up to 1,000 ancient oak trees in order to replace the cathedral's iconic spire. Critics have condemned the insistence of adhering to historical accuracy in repairing the cathedral. A petition signed by 40,000 people so far noticed that the earth is in danger, with forests suffering from global warming, stressing that the choice to cut down ancient oak trees is incomprehensible. The petition asks, what is the point for a structure that will be by definition be hidden by a cover and visible only by a few privileged people? Instead, suggesting that in the 21st century it will be better to choose more responsible engineer techniques that are less damaging to the environment. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.